Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Jack Brantley stared at the massive logistics dashboard, watching red alerts turn green one by one. 3 months of 18-hour days had led to this moment. The integration project that everyone said was impossible had just pulled Galaxtech out of their worst backlog crisis in company history. Final system check complete, he announced to the war room. All warehouses are now synchronized. Customer complaints dropped by 87% since yesterday. The team erupted in cheers. Jack allowed himself a brief smile before returning to his laptop. There would be more work tomorrow, but tonight belonged to his people. Incredible work, Jack. Cole Drayton appeared beside him, perfectly pressed suit, immaculate despite the late hour. The chief operating officer had a way of materializing whenever success was in the air. This is exactly the kind of collaborative leadership we need more of. Jack looked up from his screen. My team deserves the credit. They pulled off the impossible. Of course. Cole's smile never wavered. But someone had to orchestrate it all. Someone had to make the tough calls and keep everyone aligned. That's what real leadership looks like. The subtle shift in language made Jack's jaw tighten. Cole had just turned his team's victory into a lesson about leadership. About Cole's leadership. The metrics speak for themselves, Jack said, closing his laptop. The team executed flawlessly. They did, under strong guidance. Cole patted Jack's shoulder. You should get some rest. Big leadership debrief tomorrow morning. We need to document this success properly. Jack watched Cole work the room, shaking hands and taking credit with surgical precision. Each conversation painted the same picture. Cole had provided the vision. Jack had simply executed it. That was smooth. Marla Reyes materialized beside Jack's desk. The business analyst had been quietly observing from her corner workstation. He just turned your win into his win without saying a single false word. Politics, Jack muttered. I don't have time for it. You better make time. Marla's voice dropped to a whisper. I've seen this before. You just became a threat. Jack packed his laptop bag, ignoring the comment. He had delivered results. That was what mattered. That was what had always mattered. The next morning's leadership debrief confirmed Marla's warning. Jack sat in the conference room, surrounded by executives who hadn't slept in the office for 3 months. Cole stood at the head of the table, clicking through slides that told the story of the logistics integration. This project represents everything we stand for at Galaxtech, Cole announced. Collaborative leadership, cross-functional teamwork, and innovative problem-solving. By bringing together our best minds and providing clear strategic direction, we were able to transform a crisis into an opportunity. Jack noticed how Cole's slides emphasized leadership philosophy rather than technical solutions. The actual work his team had done was reduced to bullet points, while Cole's strategic vision took center stage. The success of this integration shows what's possible when we align our efforts under strong operational leadership, Cole continued. This kind of coordinated approach will be crucial as we scale our operations. CEO Lyndon Cross nodded approvingly. Outstanding work, Cole. This is exactly the kind of results-driven leadership we need to see more of. Jack's name was mentioned once, in passing, as a capable project manager who helped execute the vision. 3 months of his life reduced to a footnote in Cole's presentation. Jack, Cole said, turning to him with practiced warmth, would you like to add anything about the execution phase? Every eye in the room turned to Jack. He could feel the careful choreography of the moment. Cole had positioned him as a subordinate, asking for permission to speak about his own project. The technical implementation was complex, Jack said evenly, but the team handled it well. Excellent. As you can see, this project was a perfect example of how clear leadership enables great execution. Cole moved to the next slide. Now, let's talk about applying these lessons to our Q4 roadmap. The meeting continued for another hour. Jack watched Cole systematically take ownership of every major decision, every key insight, every moment of crisis management. The man was a master at rewriting history in real time. After the meeting, Jack lingered in the conference room, reviewing his notes. The technical details that had consumed his life for 3 months were already becoming footnotes in Cole's narrative. That was brutal. Marla had waited for the room to empty. He just erased you from your own project. The work speaks for itself, Jack replied. Results matter more than presentations. Do they? Marla pulled up something on her tablet. Look at this org chart from last quarter. Now look at this one from yesterday. Jack studied the 2 documents. In the first, his name appeared in a prominent position, directly reporting to the CEO with a clear mandate over logistics operations. In the second, his role had been shifted sideways, now reporting through Cole with a much narrower scope. What did this change? Yesterday, right after your project succeeded. Marla's expression was grim. He's moving you off the board, Jack. You're being repositioned as a tactical resource instead of a strategic leader. Jack stared at the org chart. The change was subtle but devastating. His access to senior leadership was now filtered through Cole. His influence over company direction had been quietly severed. Why, he asked. Because you're good at your job, Marla said, and you don't play his game. That makes you dangerous. The changes started small. Jack arrived at his desk Monday morning to find his calendar mysteriously empty. The weekly roadmap meetings he had attended for 2 years were no longer showing up in his schedule. He called Cole's assistant. Hi, this is Jack Brantley. I think there's been a mistake with my calendar. I'm not seeing the roadmap meeting this week. Let me check. A pause. I'm showing that meeting as invite only this week. Mr. Drayton is keeping it to core leadership only. Core leadership. Jack had been core leadership last month. Now he was something else. Can you add me to the invite list? I'd have to check with Mr. Drayton first. He's very particular about meeting attendance. Jack hung up and stared at his computer screen. The logistics dashboard still showed green across all metrics. His project was still saving the company millions. But somehow, he was no longer important enough to discuss the company's future. An email appeared in his inbox. The subject line made his stomach drop. Performance development opportunity. Jack, as part of our ongoing commitment to professional development, we're implementing a performance coaching program for key team members. This is a standard part of our review cycle and represents an investment in your continued growth. Your coaching sessions will focus on interpersonal effectiveness and collaborative leadership skills. HR will be in touch to schedule your first session. Please note that participation in this program is mandatory and will be documented as part of your performance record. Best regards, Cole Drayton, Chief Operating Officer. Jack read the email 3 times. The language was careful, professional, and completely terrifying. Interpersonal effectiveness was code for doesn't play well with others. Collaborative leadership skills meant doesn't follow orders well enough. And the final line was a threat wrapped in corporate speak. He forwarded the email to his personal account and called HR. Toby Van's office. This is Jack Brantley. I just received an email about a performance coaching program. Can you help me understand what this is about? Oh, hi, Jack. Let me pull up your file. Keyboard clicks. Yes, I see the note here. It's just standard review cycle stuff. Nothing to worry about. Standard review cycle? I've never heard of this program before. Well, we're always evolving our processes. The important thing is that this is a positive development opportunity. Mr. Drayton specifically requested that we offer you this resource. Jack felt the walls closing in. What specific performance issues are being addressed? Nothing specific, just general professional development. You know how it is. There's always room for growth in interpersonal skills. Interpersonal skills. Can you be more specific about what concerns have been raised? No specific concerns, Jack. This is really just a proactive investment in your career development. I'm sure you'll find it valuable. The conversation was a masterclass in saying nothing while implying everything. Jack hung up and started taking notes. Date, time, participants, exact words. If this was the beginning of a campaign against him, he needed documentation. Over the following weeks, the isolation became systematic. Projects that had been under his direct control were reassigned to other managers. His input was no longer requested on strategic decisions. Meetings happened without him, and he learned about important changes through company-wide emails. The performance coaching sessions were worse than he had expected. The coach, a consultant named Dr. Patricia Wells, spent their first meeting asking probing questions about his resistance to feedback and challenges with authority. "I'm not sure what you're referring to," Jack said. "I haven't received any feedback about these issues." Sometimes resistance to feedback manifests as not recognizing when feedback is being given, Dr. Wells replied. "Tell me about your relationship with your direct supervisor." "Cole Drayton? Our relationship is professional." "How do you handle disagreements with him?" "We don't really have disagreements. I focus on delivering results." "That's interesting. How do you think you would describe your working relationship?" Jack recognized the trap. Any answer would be wrong. If he said positive things about Cole, he would be admitting that the coaching was unnecessary. If he expressed concerns, he would be confirming that he had interpersonal problems. "I think he would say I'm competent at my job," Jack said carefully. "Just competent? Not collaborative? Not a team player? I focus on results. I think that's what matters most." Dr. Wells made notes. This focus on individual achievement versus team dynamics is something we should explore. How do you think your colleagues perceive your communication style? The session continued for an hour. Every question was designed to find problems that didn't exist, to create a paper trail of issues that could justify future disciplinary action. Jack answered each question as neutrally as possible, but he knew it didn't matter. The conclusion was predetermined. After the session, Jack sat in his car for 10 minutes, processing what had just happened. He had been ambushed by his own success. The logistics integration had made him visible, and visibility had made him a target. His phone buzzed. A text from Marla. "Coffee? Need to talk." They met at a small cafe 6 blocks from the office. Marla looked around nervously before speaking. "They're building a case against you," she said without preamble. "I've been watching the pattern, and it's textbook." "What pattern?" "Isolation, performance coaching, reassignment of responsibilities. They're creating a narrative that you're difficult to work with. Once that narrative is established, they can push you out for cause." Jack stirred his coffee. "Based on what evidence?" "They don't need evidence. They just need documentation. The coaching sessions are creating a paper trail. Dr. Wells is writing reports about your resistance to feedback and challenges with collaborative leadership. Those reports become part of your permanent record." "This is insane. I delivered the biggest project success in company history 3 months ago." "That's exactly why they're doing it. You made Cole look bad by succeeding without his help. Now he's making sure it doesn't happen again." Jack thought about the org chart changes, the missing meetings, the carefully worded emails. What's the end game? They want you to quit. If you resign, they don't have to pay severance or risk a wrongful termination lawsuit. They just need to make your life miserable enough that leaving feels like the better option. And if I don't quit, then they'll find a reason to fire you. The performance coaching gives them cover. They'll say you were given support and resources, but you failed to improve. Jack stared out the window at the Portland skyline. Somewhere in one of those buildings, Cole was probably planning his next move. The game was rigged, but Jack had never learned how to play it. "What did you do before Galaxtech?" Marla asked. "Software development at a startup. Same thing happened there. Actually, I built a product that saved the company, and the CEO's nephew decided I was a threat. I ended up leaving after they made my life hell. You've been through this before. Different company, same playbook. I thought corporate life would be different at a bigger company. More professional. It's not about the size of the company. It's about the people." Marla leaned forward. "You need to start protecting yourself. Document everything. Keep records of every conversation, every email, every meeting. If this goes legal, you'll need evidence." Jack nodded, but part of him wanted to just walk away. He had enough savings to last 6 months. He could find another job, start over somewhere else. But the thought of Cole winning made his jaw clench. "I'm not running again," he said. "Good, but you need to be smart about this. They're playing a long game. You need to play one too." The ambush came on a Tuesday morning. Jack was reviewing quarterly reports when Cole's assistant appeared at his desk. "Mr. Drayton would like to see you in conference room B," she said. "HR will be joining you." Jack's stomach dropped. Conference room B was the smallest meeting room, windowless and cramped. It was where difficult conversations happened. The presence of HR meant this was going to be very difficult. He saved his work and walked to the meeting room. Cole was already seated at the head of the small table, looking relaxed and confident. Toby Vance sat beside him, a manila folder in front of him and a carefully neutral expression on his face. "Jack, thanks for joining us." Cole gestured to the empty chair across from them. "Please sit down." Jack sat, his mind racing through possibilities. Had they found some excuse to terminate him? Had the performance coaching provided enough ammunition? "I'll get straight to the point," Cole said. "We've been monitoring your progress through the performance development program, and frankly, we're not seeing the improvement we had hoped for." "What specific improvements are you looking for?" Dr. Wells has documented several concerning patterns: resistance to feedback, difficulty accepting guidance, challenges with collaborative leadership. These are serious issues that impact team morale and company culture. Jack kept his expression neutral. "I'd like to see Dr. Wells' reports." "That's not how this works," Toby interjected. "Personnel evaluations are confidential company property. What matters is that we've identified areas where you're not meeting expectations." "What expectations?" "I haven't received any specific feedback about my performance." "The coaching program was your feedback," Cole said. "The fact that you don't recognize that proves the point. You're not absorbing the guidance you're being given." It was a perfect trap. Jack's request for clarity was being used as evidence of his inability to accept feedback. Any response will be turned against him. "We've decided that the best path forward is for you to pursue opportunities elsewhere," Cole continued. "We're prepared to make this transition as smooth as possible." Toby slid a document across the table. "This is a resignation letter. It's already been prepared for your signature. We're offering a generous severance package and positive references." Jack looked at the document without touching it. The letter was brief and professional, stating that he was resigning to pursue other opportunities and thanking the company for the chance to contribute to its success. "What if I don't resign? Then we'll have to move forward with termination for cause," Cole said. "The performance coaching documentation supports that decision. Your reputation in the industry would be significantly damaged by that kind of termination." "You're threatening me." "I'm trying to help you," Cole replied. "Sign the letter today, leave quietly, and you'll be marked as a valued former employee. Force us to terminate you for cause, and you'll be marked as non-collaborative in our industry. That record doesn't go away, Jack. It follows you everywhere." Jack stared at the resignation letter. 3 months ago, he had been the hero who saved the company. Now, he was being pushed out like a problem employee. The injustice of it made his hands shake with anger. "I need a moment to think." "Of course. Take all the time you need." Cole's smile was magnanimous. "We'll step out and give you some privacy." Cole and Toby left the room, closing the door behind them. Jack was alone with the resignation letter in his rage that he pulled out his phone and took pictures of the document from multiple angles, making sure to capture the letterhead and formatting. Then he opened his laptop and logged into the company's internal systems. Over the past weeks, Jack had been studying Galaxtech's internal processes with the same intensity he had once applied to logistics problems. He had memorized the printer codes, the document templates, the formatting standards. He had noticed that HR used a specific printer in their department, and that printer left a nearly invisible signature on every document. Working quickly, Jack accessed the HR document templates and created a new version of the resignation letter. It looked identical to the original, with one crucial difference. Where the original said, "I am resigning my position," Jack's version said, "This is a termination letter presented under executive directive." He printed the new document on his laptop, using the same paper stock and formatting as the original. Then he carefully replaced the original with his version, making sure the positioning was exact. When Cole and Toby returned, Jack was sitting calmly at the table. "Have you made your decision?" Cole asked. "I'll sign it," Jack said. He picked up the pen and signed his name at the bottom of the document. As he wrote, he activated the recording app on his phone, hidden in his jacket pocket. "Thank you, Jack. This is really the best outcome for everyone." Cole took the signed document and glanced at it quickly before sliding it into his folder. "You'll thank me for this in 6 months." "I'm sure I will," Jack replied. "HR will be in touch about the transition details. Your last day will be Friday, but you can leave immediately if you prefer. I'll clean out my desk today. That's probably for the best. Less awkward for everyone. Jack stood and shook hands with both men. Cole's grip was firm and satisfied. Toby looked relieved. Neither of them had noticed the switch. Good luck, Jack. I hope you find what you're looking for. Jack walked back to his desk in a daze. Around him, the office continued its normal rhythm. His colleagues were focused on their screens, unaware that they had just witnessed a professional execution, that he packed his personal items methodically. Photos, a coffee mug, a few books. 24 months of his life fit into a single cardboard box. Marla appeared beside his desk as he was removing his laptop cables. What happened? I resigned, Jack said quietly. Bullshit. What really happened? Jack glanced around the office. Too many ears, too many risks. I'll call you later. He carried his box to the elevator, past the conference room where Cole was probably celebrating his victory. The building that had been his second home for 2 years now felt like enemy territory as the elevator descended. Jack pulled out his phone and sent the photos and audio recording to his personal email. Then he forwarded everything to a secure cloud storage account. The lobby was busy with the usual afternoon traffic. Jack walked through it for the last time, his box balanced against his hip. The security guard who had greeted him every morning for 2 years didn't look up from his newspaper. Outside, the Portland air was crisp and clean. Jack stood on the sidewalk, looking back at the Galaxtech building. From here, it looked like any other corporate office. Nothing about its exterior suggested the predatory game being played inside. He walked to his car and carefully placed a box in the back seat. Then he sat behind the wheel and allowed himself a moment of bitter satisfaction. Cole thought he had won. He had forced Jack to sign what appeared to be a resignation letter, eliminating any legal complications. But Jack had been 3 moves ahead. The document now sitting in Cole's folder was not a resignation letter. It was a termination notice, signed under duress, with audio and photographic evidence of the coercion. Under Oregon law, that was a very different thing. Jack started his car and pulled into traffic. Act was over. Cole had played his hand perfectly, but he had no idea that Jack had been playing a different game entirely. The real fight was just beginning. Jack spent the weekend in his apartment, surrounded by printed emails, performance reviews, and legal documents. His dining table had become a war room, covered with evidence of what had really happened at Galaxtech. The signed document was the centerpiece of his case. He had scanned it immediately after leaving the office, creating a high-resolution digital copy with metadata timestamps. The altered text was clearly visible. This is a termination letter presented under executive directive. But he needed to understand the legal implications before making any moves. Oregon employment law was complex, and he couldn't afford to make mistakes. He called his lawyer, David Chun, who had helped him with his employment contract 2 years earlier. Jack, good to hear from you. How are things at Galaxtech? That's why I'm calling. I need to understand something about wrongful termination law. Oh, what happened? Jack explained the situation carefully, from the logistics project's success to the forced resignation. He sent photos of the document and audio recordings of the meeting. This is interesting, David said after reviewing the materials. You were presented with what appeared to be a resignation letter, but you altered it to say termination instead. That's correct. I signed a termination letter, not a resignation letter. And they don't know about the alteration? No, they think I resigned voluntarily. David was quiet for a moment. Jack, this is brilliant and completely insane. Do you understand what you've done? I've documented that I was terminated under duress rather than resigning voluntarily. Exactly. Under Oregon law, a termination without cause requires proper documentation and process. If they forced you to sign a termination letter under coercion, that's wrongful termination. The fact that they tried to disguise it as a resignation makes it even worse. What are the implications? If you can prove this pattern of behavior, you could have a substantial wrongful termination case. The damages could be significant, especially if you can show they've done this to other employees. Jack felt a surge of vindication. They have done this to others. I have evidence of at least one other case. Then you need to move carefully. Document everything, gather more evidence, and don't let them know what you're planning. This kind of case could expose serious problems in their HR practices. After hanging up, Jack felt energized for the first time in weeks. He had been playing defense for months, reacting to Cole's moves. Now he was ready to take the offensive. Monday morning, he called Brielle Santee. The young legal associate had been an intern when Jack had mentored her during her first month at Galaxtech. She had been smart, observant, and grateful for his guidance. "Jack, I heard you left the company. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Actually, I wanted to ask you something. Are you free for coffee this afternoon?" "Sure. Is everything all right?" "You sound serious." "I just have some questions about employment law." "Nothing dramatic." They met at a coffee shop in the Pearl District, far enough from Galaxtech to avoid accidental encounters. Brielle looked nervous, glancing around as if she expected corporate spies to emerge from behind the espresso machine. "I need to ask you about Oregon wrongful termination law," Jack said. "Hypothetically, if someone was forced to sign a termination letter under duress, what would be the legal implications?" "Hypothetically," Brielle raised an eyebrow. "Jack, what really happened at Galaxtech? I can't go into details, but I need to understand the legal framework." Brielle stirred her latte thoughtfully. "Well, hypothetically, if someone was coerced into signing a termination document, and if that coercion could be proven, it would constitute wrongful termination. Oregon is an at-will employment state, but there are still protections against retaliation and improper termination procedures." "What kind of protections?" "Companies have to follow their own policies. If they have a documented progressive discipline process, they can't skip steps. If they claim someone resigned voluntarily, but it was actually coercion, that's fraud. And if they did this to multiple employees, then you're looking at a pattern of misconduct. That could be a much bigger problem for the company." Jack nodded. "Hypothetically, if someone had evidence of such a pattern, what would be the best way to proceed?" "Hypothetically, they should document everything, gather witness statements, and consult with an employment attorney. If the evidence is solid, it could be a significant case." "Thank you. This is really helpful." "Jack," Brielle leaned forward, "I know this isn't really hypothetical. If you need help, I'm here. What they did to you is wrong. I appreciate that, but I need to be careful about involving current employees." "I understand. But if you need someone who understands the internal processes, someone who knows where the bodies are buried, I'm available." After coffee, Jack drove home with a clearer understanding of his legal position. The altered document was just the beginning. He needed to build a comprehensive case that showed a pattern of misconduct. He spent the evening researching Galaxtech's employment policies, looking for gaps between their stated procedures and their actual practices. The employee handbook required progressive discipline before termination, but Jack had never received any formal discipline. The policy required documentation of performance issues, but Jack had never seen any such documentation. The performance coaching program was the key. It had been presented as development, but it was actually a way to create a paper trail without following proper disciplinary procedures. It was clever, but it might also be illegal. Jack's investigation into Galaxtech's practices began with a simple Google search. He typed in former Galaxtech employees and started looking through LinkedIn profiles of people who had left the company in the past year. The pattern was subtle but consistent. Several senior employees had left after brief tenures, their LinkedIn profiles showing gaps or vague explanations about pursuing new opportunities. Jack started reaching out to them, using careful language to avoid any suggestion of legal action. The first response came from Marcus Webb, a former engineering manager who had left Galaxtech 8 months earlier. "Jack, good to hear from you. I heard you left too. How are you holding up?" "I'm doing well. Just trying to understand some things about the company culture. Can we grab coffee sometime?" "Absolutely. I have some stories that might interest you." They met at a cafe in Northeast Portland. Marcus looked tired, older than his 42 years. He had been with Galaxtech for only 14 months before leaving. "So what really happened to you?" Jack asked. "Same thing that happened to you, I'm guessing. I delivered a major project success, got recognition, and then suddenly I was a problem employee." "Tell me about it." Marcus stirred his coffee slowly. "I rebuilt their entire deployment pipeline, reduced deployment time by 90%, eliminated most of our production bugs. Everyone was calling it a game changer. But I did it without getting approval from the CTO. I just saw a problem and fixed it. that made him look bad, like he hadn't been managing his department properly. So what happened? Performance coaching, interpersonal skills development. Suddenly I was difficult to work with, resistant to feedback, not a team player. Sound familiar? Jack nodded. Did you resign? They made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Sign a resignation letter with a non-disclosure agreement, get a decent severance package and positive references, or get terminated for cause and have my reputation destroyed. So you signed. I signed. I had a family to think about. I couldn't risk being blacklisted in the industry. Jack leaned back in his chair. Did you keep any documentation? Some. Why? Because I think they're doing this systematically, and I think it might be illegal. Marcus studied Jack's face. You're building a case, aren't you? I'm gathering information. Nothing more than that. What do you need from me? Everything you can remember. Dates, conversations, documents. Anything that shows the pattern. Marcus pulled out his phone. I saved some screenshots. Messages between my manager and the CTO about managing my transition. Want to see them? Jack looked at the screenshots. The language was careful, but the intent was clear. Marcus was being pushed out because his success had made his superiors uncomfortable. Can you send these to me? Sure. But Jack, be careful. These people are dangerous. They know how to destroy careers without leaving fingerprints. I'm being careful. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, you look like someone who's about to declare war on a company with unlimited resources and no scruples. Jack didn't deny it. They started this war. I'm just going to finish it. Over the following weeks, Jack gathered similar stories from 3 other former employees. Each case followed the same pattern: success, recognition, isolation, performance coaching, forced resignation. The consistency was damning, but he needed more than anecdotal evidence. He needed documentation from inside the company, and that meant reaching out to Marla. They met at a different cafe, this one in Southeast Portland. Marla looked around nervously before sitting down. This is risky, she said. If they find out I'm talking to you, they won't find out. I'm being careful. Are you? Because word is getting around that you're talking to former employees. People are starting to ask questions. Jack felt a chill. What kind of questions? Legal questions. HR questions. They're worried about what you might do. Good. They should be worried. Jack, I want to help you. But I need this job. I have student loans, rent, a life. I can't risk getting fired. I understand. But I need to know what's happening inside the company. Are they talking about the resignation letter? Marla shook her head. That's the weird thing. They're not talking about it at all. It's like it never happened. Cole is acting like you just disappeared. What about your access to internal communications? Can you see anything about how they're handling my departure? I can see some things, but accessing that information would leave a trail. They monitor everything. Jack understood. He was asking her to risk her career to help him build his case. It wasn't fair, but it was necessary. What if I told you I had evidence that could protect you, that could expose what they're doing to everyone? What kind of evidence? Jack told her about the altered resignation letter, the audio recordings, the pattern of similar cases. Marla listened with growing amazement. You changed the letter without them knowing. I changed it. I signed a termination letter, not a resignation letter. And I have audio of Cole threatening me. This is insane. Do you know what you've done? I've documented the truth. Now I need to prove it's part of a pattern. Marla was quiet for a long moment. What do you need from me? Screenshots of internal communications about employee departures. Documentation of the performance coaching program. Anything that shows they're doing this systematically. If I do this and they find out, they won't find out. And if they do, I'll make sure you're protected. How can you promise that? Because I'm not going to lose this time. I'm going to expose what they're doing, and I'm going to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Marla studied his face. You're different now. Harder. I'm tired of being a victim. I'm tired of running from people like Cole. Okay, I'll help you, but I need time to be careful about it. How much time? A week. Maybe 2. I need to access the files without leaving a trail. I'll wait. But Marla, once we start this, there's no going back. Are you sure? I'm sure. What they did to you is wrong. And you're right, they're doing it to other people too. After Marla left, Jack sat alone at the cafe, planning his next moves. He had the evidence of his own case, testimony from other victims, and soon he would have documentation of the company's systematic misconduct. But he needed one more thing: access to someone who could do something about it. Someone with the power to make Galaxtech accountable for its actions. That he needed to get to Ira Bloom. Ira Bloom was legendary at Galaxtech. The corporate council had a reputation for brilliant legal maneuvering and complete political neutrality. They played by the rules, but they played to win. If something was legally clever, Ira respected it regardless of which side it came from. Jack had interacted with Ira only a few times during his tenure, but he had always been impressed by their sharp mind and dry wit. More importantly, Ira reported directly to the CEO and had the power to initiate internal investigations. The challenge was making contact without alerting Cole or HR. Jack needed a way to reach Ira that wouldn't raise suspicions. The solution came from an unexpected source: the Galaxtech Alumni Network. The company maintained a mailing list for former employees, and Jack was still subscribed. When he saw an invitation to a networking event at a downtown hotel, he knew he had found his opportunity. The event was typical corporate networking: business cards, small talk, and overpriced wine. Jack arrived early and positioned himself near the entrance, watching for Ira's arrival. Ira appeared at 7:30, looking slightly annoyed by the social obligation. They grabbed a glass of wine and found a quiet corner, checking their phone with the air of someone who had somewhere better to be. Jack waited 15 minutes before approaching. Ira? Jack Brantley. We worked together on the logistics integration project. Jack, yes. I heard you left the company. How are you adjusting to civilian life? It's been interesting. Actually, I was hoping to run something by you. A legal question. Ira's expression sharpened. What kind of legal question? A hypothetical about employment law. Are you available for coffee sometime this week? Hypothetical employment law questions from former employees are rarely hypothetical. What's this about? Jack looked around the crowded room. It's about document authentication and coercion. I think you'd find it intellectually interesting. Document authentication? Now you have my attention. Thursday morning, 10 o'clock. There's a cafe called Stumptown on 3rd Street. I'll be there. And Ira? This conversation needs to stay between us. I'm a lawyer, Jack. Confidentiality is what I do. Thursday morning, Jack arrived at Stumptown with a leather portfolio containing his evidence. Ira was already there, reading something on their tablet while sipping an espresso. Jack, you look like someone who's about to present a case. In a way, I am. Jack sat down and placed the portfolio on the table. I want to show you something, but first I need to explain what happened to me at Galaxtech. Jack told the story methodically, starting with the logistics project success and ending with the forced resignation. He showed Ira the audio recordings, the photographs, and the altered document. Ira listened without interruption, occasionally asking questions for clarification. When Jack finished, they sat in silence for a moment. This is remarkable, Ira finally said. You actually switched the document without them knowing. I did. I signed a termination letter presented under executive directive, not a resignation letter. I have audio of Cole threatening me and photographic evidence of the coercion. And Cole still has the signed document. As far as I know, yes. It's probably in my personnel file. Ira leaned back in their chair. Jack, do you understand what you've done? You've created a legal landmine. If this document is used as evidence of voluntary resignation, and if you can prove it was actually coerced termination, Galaxtech could face serious liability. That's what I was hoping you'd say. But it's not just about your case. If you can prove this was part of a systematic pattern, I can. Jack opened his portfolio and pulled out documentation from his conversations with former employees. I found at least 4 other cases with identical patterns. Performance coaching used as a pretext for termination, forced resignations to avoid severance payments, threats about industry reputation. Iris studied the documents. This is a comprehensive case. Have you consulted with an employment attorney? I have, but I wanted to give Galaxtech a chance to address this internally before filing any lawsuits. How generous of you. What exactly are you proposing? I want a meeting with Linden Cross. I want to present this evidence and give the company a chance to make things right. And if they refuse, then I file a wrongful termination lawsuit and go public with the evidence. I've already been contacted by a journalist who's investigating corporate misconduct in the tech industry. Ira raised an eyebrow. You've been busy. I've been thorough. This isn't about revenge, Ira. It's about stopping a pattern of abuse. Cole is destroying people's careers, and the company is allowing it to happen. What do you want from me? I want you to review this evidence and make a recommendation to the CEO. If you agree that there's merit to the case, I want a formal meeting where I can present my findings. And if I don't agree, then I'll proceed through other channels. But I think you're too smart to dismiss this evidence. You know what this could mean for the company if it becomes public. Ira gathered the documents and put them back in Jack's portfolio. I need to review this more carefully. Give me 48 hours. I'll wait for your call. Jack, I have to ask, why are you doing this? You could probably settle for a significant amount of money and move on with your life. Because I'm tired of running. I'm tired of letting people like Cole destroy careers without consequences. And I'm tired of companies that talk about values and integrity while allowing systematic abuse. That's a noble sentiment. But nobility doesn't always win in court. No, but evidence does. And I have evidence. Ira stood up. I'll be in touch. Jack watched them leave, feeling the weight of anticipation. He had presented his case to the one person at Galaxtech who could make a difference. Now he had to wait and see if justice was possible within the system, or if he would have to seek it outside. 46 hours later, his phone rang. Jack, it's Ira. We need to talk. I'm listening. I've reviewed your evidence. I've also done some additional research into the company's employment practices. What I found was disturbing. How disturbing? Disturbing enough that I've scheduled a meeting with the CEO for Monday morning. You just built a noose, Jack. Now I need to decide who to hang. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Jack had spent the weekend preparing for what would either be his vindication or his final defeat. He dressed carefully, choosing a conservative suit that projected competence and credibility. This was not a day for taking chances. Ira had called the night before to confirm the meeting details. 9 o'clock sharp, in the executive conference room. Lyndon Cross would be there, along with Toby Van from HR and Cole Drayton. Jack would present his evidence, and the company would have to decide how to respond. Are you ready for this? Ira had asked. I've been ready for months. Remember, this isn't about revenge. It's about resolution. Keep your emotions in check and let the evidence speak for itself. Jack arrived at the Galaxtech building at 8:30, early enough to observe the morning routine he had been part of for 2 years. Employees streamed through the lobby, heading to their desks and their meetings, unaware that the foundation of their company was about to be tested. The executive conference room was on the 32nd floor, with windows overlooking the Portland skyline. Jack had been in this room only once before for a company-wide presentation about quarterly results. Now he was here to present evidence of systematic corruption. Ira was already there, setting up a laptop and projector. They looked up as Jack entered. Good morning. Are you ready for this? As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, you're not on trial here. They are. Present your evidence clearly and let them respond. Whatever happens, don't let them put you on the defensive. At 9 o'clock exactly, the others arrived. Lyndon Cross entered first, looking every inch the CEO in his perfectly tailored suit. His expression was neutral, but Jack could see the tension in his shoulders. Behind him came Toby Van, pale and nervous, carrying a thick folder. Cole brought up the rear, his usual confidence intact, but his eyes scanning the room with unusual wariness. Gentlemen, Cross said, taking his seat at the head of the table. Ira has indicated that we have a serious matter to discuss. Mr. Brantley, I understand you have some concerns about your departure from the company. I do, Jack replied. But they're not just concerns. They're documented violations of employment law. Cole shifted in his seat. Lyndon, I'm not sure why we're entertaining this. Jack resigned voluntarily. We have his signed resignation letter. That's interesting, Jack said, because I never sign a resignation letter. The room went silent. Cross looked from Jack to Cole and back again. I'm sorry, what? Jack opened his portfolio and pulled out a copy of the document. Mr. Drayton presented me with what appeared to be a resignation letter. But what I actually signed was a termination letter presented under executive directive. He slid the document across the table to Cross. The CEO read it carefully, his expression growing darker with each line. This is a termination letter, Cross said. Yes, it is. I was coerced into signing it under threat of having my reputation destroyed in the industry. I have audio recordings of that conversation. Jack placed a small digital recorder on the table and pressed play. Cole's voice filled the room. Sign it today, leave quietly, or you'll be marked as non-collaborative in our industry. That record doesn't go away, Jack. The silence that followed was deafening. Cross stared at the recorder as if it were a snake. Is it your voice, Cole? Cross asked. I was trying to help Jack transition smoothly. Sometimes these conversations are difficult. You threatened to destroy his reputation if he didn't sign a document. That's coercion. That's not how I meant it. Intent doesn't matter, Ira interjected. What matters is the effect. And the effect was to force an employee to sign a termination letter under duress. Toby cleared his throat. I was in that meeting. I can confirm that the conversation was about voluntary resignation, not termination. Really? Jack pulled out another document. Because according to Oregon employment law, if an employee is forced to sign a termination letter, it doesn't matter what the conversation was about. What matters is what they signed. Cross studied the legal brief. Ira, is this accurate? It's accurate. And it's not the only problem we have. Ira activated the projector and displayed the first slide of a presentation. Mr. Brantley's case is not isolated. We have evidence of a systematic pattern of forced resignations designed to avoid severance payments and wrongful termination lawsuits. The slides showed a timeline of employee departures, each following the same pattern: success, isolation, performance coaching, forced resignation. The consistency was damning. This is circumstantial, Cole said. People leave companies for all kinds of reasons. Not according to their own words, Jack replied. He pulled out printed screenshots. These are messages between you and other managers discussing how to manage transitions for problem employees. Cross took the screenshots and read them in silence. The language was careful, but the intent was clear. Employees were being pushed out systematically. Where did you get these? Cole demanded. That's not important. What's important is that they document a pattern of misconduct. They're taken out of context. They don't prove anything. They prove that you've been doing this to multiple employees, Jack said, and they prove that the company has been allowing it to happen. Cross looked at Ira. What's our legal exposure here? Significant. If even half of these cases resulted in wrongful termination, we could be facing millions in damages, plus legal fees, plus the cost of defending against a class action lawsuit. Class action, Toby squeaked. If we can prove systematic misconduct, yes. And that's before we consider the public relations nightmare. Jack leaned forward. I've already been contacted by a journalist who's investigating corporate misconduct in the tech industry. This story will become public whether we resolve it internally or not. Cross was quiet for a long moment. What do you want, Mr. Brantley? I want accountability. I want this pattern of abuse to stop. And I want the company to take responsibility for what's been done. Be specific. I want Cole Drayton removed from his position. I want the company to implement proper oversight of the HR department. And I want compensation for the employees who've been wrongfully terminated. That's impossible, Cole said. You can't just walk in here and demand that I be fired. I'm not demanding anything, Jack replied. I'm presenting evidence of systematic misconduct and giving the company a chance to address it voluntarily. Cross looked at the documents spread across the table. Ira, what's your recommendation? We need to take this seriously. The evidence is compelling, and the legal risks are substantial. If we don't address this internally, we'll be addressing it in court. And if we do address it internally, then we might be able to contain the damage. But it will require significant changes to our management practices. Cross was quiet for another long moment. Cole, I need to hear your side of this. Cole straightened in his chair. Lyndon, I've been managing difficult employee situations for years. Sometimes people don't work out, and sometimes they need to be transitioned out of the company. That's not misconduct, that's management. But you force them to sign termination letters while telling them they were resignations. I was trying to make the process easier for everyone, less confrontational. You were committing fraud, Jack said. You were avoiding legal obligations by lying to employees about what they were signing. I was doing what was best for the company. No, You were doing what was best for yourself. You were eliminating threats to your position while avoiding the cost and legal exposure of proper termination procedures. Cross studied Cole's face. Is that true? Of course not. I was following company policy. What policy? Ira asked. Because I've reviewed our employment policies, and none of them authorize coercing employees to sign termination letters. The performance coaching program was designed to help employees improve. No, it was designed to create a paper trail for termination. Dr. Wells was writing reports about performance issues that didn't exist. Cross looked at Toby. Did you know about this? Toby shifted uncomfortably. I knew about the performance coaching program. I thought it was legitimate professional development. But you were in the meeting where Mr. Brantley was coerced into signing the termination letter. I thought he was resigning voluntarily, even though he was being threatened with reputation destruction if he didn't sign. I didn't interpret it that way. How did you interpret it? Toby had no answer. The room fell silent except for the hum of the ventilation system. Cross gathered the documents and stood up. I need to discuss this with the board. This meeting is adjourned. As the others filed out, Jack remained seated. He had presented his case, but he couldn't tell if it had been enough. Cross had looked disturbed by the evidence, but disturbed executives didn't always make the right decisions. Ira lingered after the others left. That went better than I expected. How can you tell? Cross is a businessman. He understands risk. And you just showed him that the risk of inaction is greater than the risk of action. What happens now? Now we wait. But I don't think we'll be waiting long. The call came at 2 o'clock that afternoon. Cross wanted to reconvene the meeting at 3:30. All the original participants, plus 2 additional board members. Jack arrived to find the atmosphere had changed completely. Cross looked grim. The board members looked serious, and Cole looked like a man who had just realized his world was ending. Mr. Brantley, Cross said, we've had a chance to review your evidence more thoroughly. We've also conducted some additional investigation into the matters you raised. What kind of investigation? We pulled the personnel files for the employees you mentioned. We reviewed the performance coaching documentation. We examined the patterns of employee departures over the past 18 months. Cross paused. What we found was disturbing. One of the board members, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, leaned forward. Mr. Brantley, can you confirm that the document you signed was identical to the one we have in our files? Jack looked at the paper she slid across the table. It was the termination letter he had signed, with his alteration clearly visible. Yes, that's what I signed. And you're certain that Mr. Drayton and Mr. Van believed you were signing a resignation letter? They specifically told me it was a resignation letter. I have audio recordings of that conversation. The board member turned to Cole. Mr. Drayton, can you explain how an employee signs a termination letter while being told it's a resignation letter? Cole's usual confidence was cracking. There must be some mistake. I'm certain we presented him with a resignation letter. Then how do you explain this? She held up the document. This clearly states that it's a termination letter presented under executive directive. I don't know how that happened. You don't know how your own termination letter was created. It wasn't a termination letter. It was a resignation letter. The board member looked at Ira. Do we have the original document template? We do. It was created on Mr. Drayton's computer and printed in the HR department. The metadata shows it was a resignation letter template. So somewhere between creation and signing, the document was altered. That's correct. Mr. Brantley, did you alter this document? Jack met her gaze steadily. I signed exactly what was presented to me. What I signed was a termination letter. That's impossible, Cole said. I would have noticed if the document had been changed. Would you? Did you read it carefully before I signed it? Of course I read it. Then you knew I was signing a termination letter, not a resignation letter. No, that's not what happened. The board member leaned back in her chair. Mr. Drayton, either you knowingly coerced an employee to sign a termination letter while telling him it was a resignation letter, or you were so careless that you didn't notice when the document was altered. Which is it? Cole was trapped. Either answer was damning. He looked around the room desperately, searching for an escape that didn't exist. I think there's been a misunderstanding, he said finally. What kind of misunderstanding? I was trying to help Jack transition smoothly. Sometimes these conversations get complicated. By threatening to destroy his reputation, I never threatened him. Jack pressed play on the digital recorder. Cole's voice filled the room again. Sign it today. Leave quietly, or you'll be marked as non-collaborative in our industry. That record doesn't go away, Jack. Is that your voice, Mr. Drayton? The board member asked. Yes, but... And you're threatening to damage his reputation if he doesn't sign the document. I was explaining the consequences of his choices. By threatening him with retaliation, I was trying to help him understand the situation. The board member turned to Cross. I think we've heard enough. Cross nodded. Mr. Drayton, you're suspended pending further investigation. Security will escort you out. Lyndon, you can't do this. I've been with this company for 8 years. I've delivered results. You've systematically violated employment law and exposed the company to massive liability. You're done here. 2 security guards appeared at the door. Cole looked around the room one last time, his face a mixture of disbelief and rage. This is a mistake, he said. You'll regret this. The only mistake was allowing this to go on as long as it did, Cross replied. The guard escorted Cole out, leaving the room in stunned silence. Jack watched him go, feeling no satisfaction. Cole's downfall was necessary, but it didn't undo the damage he had caused. Mr. Van, Cross said, your involvement in this matter is also under investigation. You're suspended as well. Toby's face went white. Sir, I was just following orders. You were present when an employee was coerced into signing a termination letter. You did nothing to stop it. That makes you complicit. I thought he was resigning voluntarily, even though he was being threatened. I didn't understand the legal implications. Then you shouldn't have been in that meeting. Security will escort you out as well. Toby left with the same security guards, his career at Galaxtech over in a matter of minutes. With Cole and Toby gone, the room felt different. The threat that had hung over Jack for months was finally gone. But the bigger question remained, what would happen next? Mr. Brantley, Cross said, I want to apologize on behalf of Galaxtech. What happened to you was completely unacceptable. We failed in our duty to protect our employees from this kind of misconduct. Jack nodded. I appreciate that, but apologies don't undo the damage. No, they don't. That's why we're prepared to offer you a substantial settlement. Full severance, compensation for lost wages, and a guarantee that this will never happen again. What about the other employees who were treated the same way? We're prepared to reach out to them as well. We want to make this right for everyone who was affected. The board member pulled out a thick document. This is a settlement agreement. It includes financial compensation, a non-disclosure agreement, and a commitment from the company to implement new oversight procedures. Jack took the document and scanned it quickly. The financial terms were generous, more than he had expected. But the non-disclosure agreement was comprehensive, preventing him from discussing the case with anyone. I need to think about this, he said. Of course. Take all the time you need. Actually, I have a counter-proposal. Cross raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. I don't want a settlement with an NDA. I want something different. What do you want? I want a consulting contract. I want to help Galaxtech audit its employment practices and implement systems to prevent this from happening again. The board member looked surprised. You want to work with us? I want to fix the problem. This isn't just about what happened to me. It's about creating a workplace where employees are treated fairly and legally. That's unexpected, Cross said. Most people in your position would take the money and move on. I'm not most people. I'm tired of running from problems. I want to solve them. Cross exchanged glances with the board member. What kind of consulting contract are you proposing? 6 months, part-time. I'll review your employment policies, interview current and former employees, and develop recommendations for systemic changes. Full transparency, no NDA, complete access to personnel files. And in exchange, I won't file a lawsuit. I won't go to the press. I'll work with you to fix this internally. That's a generous offer, the board member said. But why should we trust you? Because I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in results. If we can fix this problem, it benefits everyone. Cross was quiet for a long moment. What would your recommendations include? Independent oversight of the HR department. Clear procedures for performance management. Training for managers on employment law. And most importantly, a zero-tolerance policy for the kind of misconduct that happened here. And if we implement these changes, Then Galaxtech becomes a better place to work. You reduce legal risk, improve employee retention, and rebuild trust in your management. And if we don't, then you'll be dealing with more cases like mine. And eventually, you'll face a class action lawsuit that could destroy the company. Cross looked around the room. I need to discuss this with the board, but I'm inclined to accept your proposal. Good, because I think we can do something positive here. We can turn this crisis into an opportunity. The meeting ended with handshakes and promises to reconvene within the week. Jack left the building feeling cautiously optimistic. He had achieved something he had never thought possible. He had turned his victimization into an opportunity for systemic change. As he walked to his car, his phone buzzed with a text from Marla. Heard Cole got fired. Are you okay? Jack typed back. I'm fine. Better than fine. I think we're going to fix this place. What do you mean? I'll explain later. But Marla, things are about to get better at Galaxtech. 3 days later, Cross called with the board's decision. They would accept Jack's proposal. 6 months, full access, complete transparency. Galaxtech was ready to change. Jack's first day as a consultant was surreal. He walked through the same lobby, rode the same elevator, but everything felt different. He was no longer an employee trying to survive the corporate hierarchy. He was an agent of change, armed with the power to make things better. His first meeting was with the interim head of HR, a woman named Patricia Chun who had been brought in from outside the company. She was smart, experienced, and horrified by what she had discovered in the personnel files. I've been doing this for 20 years, she said. I've never seen anything like this. The systematic nature of it, the careful documentation, the complete disregard for employee rights. It's like they were running a manual on how to violate employment law. That's why we're here, Jack said, to make sure it never happens again. Over the following weeks, Jack interviewed dozens of current and former employees. The stories were consistent. Fear, intimidation, systematic abuse of power. But there were also stories of hope, of people who had stayed because they believed in the company's mission. His recommendations were comprehensive. New policies, new training, new oversight mechanisms. But most importantly, a cultural change that would make employee abuse impossible. 6 months later, Jack submitted his final report. Galaxtech had transformed itself from a company that tolerated abuse to one that actively prevented it. The changes weren't just cosmetic. They were fundamental. The company offered him a permanent position as Director of Employee Relations. He declined. His work there was done, and he had other plans. Jack's consulting firm, Exit Logic, opened its doors 6 months after his final day at Galaxtech. His blog post, the one word that cost them millions, had gone viral, generating thousands of inquiries from employees who had faced similar situations. He had found his calling, helping employees navigate corporate abuse and empowering them to fight back. The skills he had developed at Galaxtech, documentation, evidence gathering, legal strategy, had become the foundation of a business dedicated to workplace justice. His first client was a software engineer who had been forced to sign a non-compete agreement that would have prevented him from working in his field for 2 years. His second was a marketing manager who had been terminated for reporting sexual harassment. His third was a data analyst who had been pushed out for refusing to falsify reports. Each case was different, but the pattern was the same: employees being victimized by systems designed to protect companies rather than people. Jack's job was to level the playing field, to give workers the tools they needed to fight back. The work was challenging, but it was also deeply satisfying. Every victory was a blow against the kind of systematic abuse that had nearly destroyed his own career. Every client who walked away with dignity intact was proof that the system could be changed. Late one evening, as Jack was reviewing case files in his home office, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I think they're doing the same thing to me. Can we talk? Jack smiled and typed back. Send everything. I'll help you make it count. The fight against corporate abuse was far from over. But for the first time in his career, Jack felt like he was winning.